Morning, everyone.
Morning.
How are you?
Fine, how are you?
I'm not too bad. Well, I come from Mauritius, and I've actually decided to call my presentation the Dwindling Democratic Star. I'll tell you why, and I hope I have enough time to tell you why. This is the country where I come from, and it's interesting to see that Twain in 1896 said that Mauritius was, you gather the idea that Mauritius was made first and then heaven made on it. And that's, in fact, a lot of our work is about that. People say, listen, you come from heaven, why bother? Why democracy doesn't matter in your country? But it does matter, and we've been working for the last 15 years to understand what has happened in Paradise and why has Paradise started to sort of become more difficult to manage in terms of its democratic model. Another very interesting quotation that I want to bring to your mind is in 1972, Mauritius had just become 4 years independent, and V.I. Naipaul, who many of you might know, which is a Nobel Prize writer, talked about Mauritius in terms of that the escape routes were very confined, that Mauritius had not much to do but just to sort of work within this, what he called an imperial barracoon. And I'm happy to say that we proved V.S. Naipaul wrong, because in the next 30 years, what we did was actually develop a very important miracle economic model. And Mauritius is quoted as the poster child in many writings of having been able to sort of deal with structural adjustment programs, which many African countries suffered. We invested a lot in education, we invested a lot on health, and our human capital benefited from that. So I think we learned a number of good lessons. We became very resilient in terms of the manner in which democracy was meted out. And this is very much what Mauritius is all about, a ballot culture, not a bullet culture. And actually developing a ballot culture has created a lot of political stability in the country. When I talk about political stability, we've had 10 general elections since 1968. These general elections have been relatively free and fair, although I'm a bit uncomfortable when we talk about free and fair, where you tick the checklist and said, this is a free and fair election. We've had change of government. People who have defeated, parties who have been defeated have accepted defeat without any political or ethnic violence. So we've been the poster child, and that poster child has developed into what I call a poster child syndrome, where we don't get very often taken for serious when we say that there is trouble in Paradise. And for the last 10 to 15 years, I've been trying to draw attention to what's wrong in Mauritius. And there are many things wrong in Mauritius. One of the issues that I've sort of confronted when understanding the political sort of history and the political culture is we have these four guys there. I mean, they're okay. I mean, but that's the father, that's the son, that's the father, that's the son. And the problem is that at the moment, we have a prime minister who's nearing 85 years old. And that's a big issue in African politics, because the average age of the African youth is basically, out the African population ranges from 20 to 25. And when you've got a political leader who's 85 years old, that tells a lot about the limited aspirations of a country. So this issue of dominance and dynastic politics has been, very problematic in terms of closing opportunities and creating a political space that requires you either to be connected to a political dynasty or to be have a lot of cash, money. I mean, I mentioned that a couple of last time, that money has become the point of entry to do politics in Mauritius, which is not different from many parts of the world. But the problem for us is that we are small, and when opportunities are closed, that becomes very problematic. The other issue that we've been grappling for the last 20 years is the rise of ethnic politics. Again, friends tell me on the continent, well, ethnicity and politics is part of the African DNA. And I say yes, but again, when ethnicity becomes the name and the way that people are enter into politics, that becomes very problematic. And here we've seen that Mauritius has perfected that game of ethnic politics in the manner in which people are selected, in the manner in which candidates are nominated, and it affects the whole sort of societal dynamics in Mauritius. So you need to be connected, you need to know who, and that's problematic for a country where human capital and human resources is the only important form of aspiration. So ethnic politics. We've actually perfected a concept known as the best loser system, which is very typical to Mauritius, which uses an ethnic quota to ensure that ethnicity is the most important factor in political setups. Now, you would think that an ethnic quota exists, but what about a gender quota? What about a youth quota? What about, quotas are important, but in Mauritius, the only element that seems to have gained ascendancy is the ethnic quota. Another issue is gender representation. Again, we are the best student on the continent, but it seems that systematically women are crowded out. So, these are the multiplicities of problems that we face as a small nation. Now, what can be done? Because there's always a silver lining to a dark cloud. I think there is, in the last 10 years, I've been away from the country for the last 4 years, and I've seen in the last 10 years, monitoring the quality of democracy, because this is my concern. Democracy is there, but what we've seen over time fritter away is the quality of democracy. What can be done? We've started an important research some months ago on capturing the youth dividend factor. We've been talking to a lot of young people, trying to sort of get them back into the political sphere. A lot of people tell you, we're not interested in politics because it's for old people. We're not interested in politics because it seems to be dirty. We are not interested in politics because there's not our aspirations that are factored into there. So we've started an important project, and some interesting data is coming out of there. People are interested in politics, but they are not interested in the politics that exists as we speak now. The other element that I'm very starting to actually do is trying to understand how data can enhance the quality of democracy. Now, when I mentioned that Mauritius is always the poster child and it always ticks on economic, political, democratic sort of indicators, it's because many of those indicators are outside the country, whether it's World Bank, whether it's the IMF, whether it's Mo Ibrahim Index, and very often this gives a sort of lethargy, political lethargy, to those in power to say, listen, why are you making noise? Because everyone's saying we are number one. So my idea of, through the open data and access to generating and allowing the population to generate their own data, to be able to sort of understand where are the cracks in democracy and how they can actually sort of be part of this democratic sort of project. So the idea of open data, user-generated content, allowing this new form of participatory democracy. So moving away from what one would call the supply side of democracy to the more demand side democracy. And I think we've come at a very important time in our history where, unfortunately, in our political sort of landscape, we are a little bit what V.S. Naipaul is saying, that the barracoon is getting overcrowded and the escape routes are closed. So I wouldn't want to say that I agree with that V.S. Naipaul was right, but I think our small country deserves much more than that. And I think this is the idea of actually going out and actually speaking in a very vocal manner that Paradise has its numerous problems. And I would very much like to take your answers in Q&A, because Mauritius is a small country, but it has so many layered complexities. So thank you for your attention, and look forward to questions.